Hey there. Before we dive into today's episode, I'm so excited to tell you about the brand new NeuroHeir membership, a unique nervous system support container where regulation meets real life. As a member, you'll receive access to the brand new NeuroHeir regulation support app. Plus, you'll be able to join our private heartbeat community completely off social media. You'll also get monthly live coaching, somatic practice labs, and a container where naming isn't shaming and transformation happens through supported practice. Are you ready for real nervous system support? Visit leannahunt.com/NHM podcast to learn more about joining our regulated community. The link will also always be in the show notes. And just a note, this membership is not therapy or crisis support. And due to my ethical responsibilities, unfortunately, it is not for current clinical therapy clients. Past clients, please reach out directly to discuss options. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to the NeuroHeir podcast, the show for cycle breakers, parents, young adults, and helping professionals ready to understand their nervous system through a generational lens, heal what isn't theirs to carry, and consciously choose what comes next. Hi, I'm your host, Leanna Hunt, an associate clinical mental health counselor and certified performance coach. Each week, you'll get stories, science, and somatic practices, plus my signature 4N framework: notice, name, nurture, and navigate to help you honor resilience, break silence, and build deeper connection with yourself and those you love, all while shaping a legacy of safety, freedom, and possibility. Welcome back to the NeuroHeir podcast. There's a scene in the movie Inside Out where Riley, the little girl, is sitting at the dinner table with her parents and they're eating Chinese takeout. And you can feel the tension building. You can watch this clip on YouTube, or if you've seen the movie, maybe you remember it. Her dad looks over at her at the table and says, "Riley, I don't like this new attitude." And inside Riley's mind, anger immediately responds, and he says, "Take it to DEFCON 2. And what's so interesting about that moment is her nervous system was already escalating before she ever yelled. Before Riley pushed the table after that, before she stormed upstairs, before she screamed, "Just leave me alone," the activation had already started in her body and her brain. And I think a lot of us know what that feels like. That moment where something shifts inside your body and everything suddenly starts to feel faster, maybe tighter, hotter, louder. And from the outside, it can look like anger. Maybe it is overreacting. Maybe it looks like having a bad attitude, or the whole system is just experiencing and showing too much emotion. But from a nervous system perspective, something else is happening. The system, like Riley's, was moving into protection. And that's what this next series of episodes is really about. Over the next few weeks, we're going to walk through the 4 major nervous system survival patterns, which include fight, flight, freeze, and it's known as fawn, but I like to call it appeasement. And we're going to go into not just what they are, but what they actually feel like inside the body. We're going to go into how they show up in real life, how they affect our relationships, how they become automatic patterns, and how we begin working with them maybe just a little bit differently. Because most people were never taught that their reactions make sense. Most of us have been taught or were told, stop overreacting, calm down, be less emotional, just try harder. But the nervous system doesn't respond well to shame. It does respond well to safety. It responds well to awareness, to repetition, to support. And yes, part of this work is often about learning how to slow the reactivity, to learn how to pause sooner, to feel less consumed by the intensity of the emotion like anger, to respond differently than we did before. But what if healing isn't about becoming less human? What if it's not about never feeling anger or never becoming activated again? What if it's about understanding what your nervous system is trying to do so you can start to work with it differently? Because fight is not just anger. I want you guys to remember that fight is protection. It's the body preparing to mobilize. It is your nervous system saying something does not feel safe right now. And so today we're going to talk about what happens when the body learns to survive through fight, not with shame, but with understanding. And the thing about fight is that most people don't recognize it right away. Because when we hear the phrase fight energy, we often imagine rage or explosive anger or yelling or someone completely losing control. But fight actually exists on a spectrum. And it can show up anywhere from anxiety quietly building in the body all the way to full-on road rage. Sometimes it's really subtle, actually, like irritation rising faster than usual. Maybe it's starting to feel just a little bit overstimulated. Maybe it's being short with people that you love. Maybe it's feeling pressure building in your chest. Maybe it's just wanting everyone to stop talking or feeling emotionally on edge. And then sometimes it's bigger, where we start snapping at people, we're yelling, we're slamming doors, we're reactive texting, we're exploding after holding things in for too long. That intense activated energy that suddenly feels way too big to contain. And what's important to understand is that most of the time, the nervous system was already escalating long before the outward reaction happened. Let me say that one more time. The nervous system most of the time was already escalating long before that outward reaction happened, just like Riley in Inside Out. Inside her mind, you can see the activation building before she ever yells. Anger starts taking over the control panel. The emotions start becoming more reactive. Things are getting louder and faster and more intense. And then eventually, like at the dinner table, yelling started happening. But the activation actually starts quite a bit of time before the moment. And this is interesting because when I work with a client and we are exploring anger, a lot of times they'll say, yeah, Leanna, I just go from 0 to 60 just like that. And that's what it can feel like in the body. It can totally feel like that. And I get that. But as we start slowing it down, as we start to become more intentional of our nervous system patterns, we will be able to see, as I've talked about before, that several things actually have to happen in the body before that moment of that outward activation. And I think that a lot of us might actually know what this feels like. It's the moment where something inside your body starts shifting before words come out. For some people, it's their thoughts speed up first. For some, they notice that their muscles get tight first. For some, it's your jaw clenching. And for some, it's noticing they're either holding their breath or their breath rate increases rapidly. And oftentimes, it's things getting louder, feeling faster. And maybe part of you is still trying to stay calm, while another part of you can feel the pressure building underneath. Because remember, fight energy is that mobilizing energy. It is your body preparing to protect you. It's preparing to push back, to regain control, to create space. Your body might also be preparing to defend against something the nervous system perceives as threatening or overwhelming. And when the nervous system moves into this kind of activation, the body is no longer prioritizing deep reflection or careful responding. It is prioritizing that one thing. Do you know what it is? It's survival. That's why afterwards, so many people say things like, I don't even know why I reacted that strongly, or wow, that escalated so much faster than I realized, or I felt so completely overwhelmed. It's like I had no control over what my words said or what my body was doing. And maybe sometimes it's saying, that is not how I wanted to respond. This is your nervous system again, moving into protection. And for some people, this response has been practiced inside generational patterns as well, which is part of why I think Inside Out resonates with so many people, because underneath the humor and animation, it's actually showing how emotional experiences shape patterns over time. There's even this moment in Inside Out where anger talks about protecting Riley's core memories. And while the movie simplifies it, there's something really true underneath that idea. Our nervous systems learn from experience too. They do remember what felt overwhelming. Our nervous systems remember what felt unsafe, what felt humiliating, what felt threatening. And over time, the body begins building protective responses around those experiences because your nervous system is adaptive. Fight energy does not come out of nowhere. It is learned. And over time, the nervous system begins adapting to the environments we live in. And for some of you, fight became the strategy that your body has trusted the most. especially in environments where you had to advocate for yourself early on. Your needs weren't heard unless they were loud. Boundaries weren't respected, or intensity was normalized around you. And maybe anger was the only emotion that seemed powerful. Maybe shutting down did not feel possible. Maybe your environment taught your body, if I don't protect myself, nobody else is going to. Maybe your body learned through repetition. So over time, the nervous system starts adapting around one central idea. If I push back, I might be safer. Or if I get louder, it's the only way I have control. And after enough repetition, that response becomes more automatic. And again, it's not because you're consciously choosing it, but because your nervous system has practiced it over and over again. And this is also where we begin to realize, again, that sometimes those patterns are bigger than just us. That is that generational component. There were times in history where fight energy like anger, hypervigilance, reactivity, and mobilization actually helped people to survive, where being highly alert mattered, where pushing back mattered, where staying ready mattered. And for your family systems and over time, fight probably really did mean protection, resistance, and survival. And your body remembers that too. Research by Rachel Yehuda in epigenetics suggests that stress responses can be influenced across generations, including changes in how the nervous system responds to threat through mechanisms like stress hormone regulation and gene expression. And honestly, one of my favorite studies on this is the transgenerational epigenetic inheritance out of Emory University. I know that was a lot of words. I'm going to explain it. Researchers conditioned male mice to fear the scent of a cherry blossom smell, specifically a chemical called acetophenone. There you go, by pairing the scent with mild electric shock. So the scientists gave these mice this scent of the cherry blossom, and then the mice felt an electric shock at the same time they smelled the scent. And eventually, the mice started reacting with fear to the scent alone, which means that they started to give the mice the smell without the shock, and the mice still had the same fear response. But what is even so much more fascinating is that their offspring and even their grand offspring, who had never experienced the scent paired with shock themselves, also showed increased sensitivity and fear responses to the same smell. Their bodies reacted to something that they had never consciously experienced. And something that's also interesting is that these mice were paired with female mice who had also not been exposed to the smell or to the shock. And so their offspring and grand offspring experienced that fear from the smell without receiving the shock too. How crazy is that? And while humans are obviously much more complex than mice, studies like this open an important conversation. What happens when generations live through things like war, through violence, through scarcity, through chronic stress, or emotional survival? And some of the biggest questions that I sit with, or I guess one biggest question is, what gets carried forward through all of this? Through all of these family things that do not get healed, do not get talked about? What is it that actually is getting passed on? And sometimes this becomes an invitation to look at our family history maybe a little bit differently and to start to wonder, what did my people before me have to do to survive? What stress did my ancestors or could they have carried? Are there things that maybe they never got the chance to process, to feel, or to talk about? Maybe your ancestors lived through a war. Maybe there was unimaginable loss. Maybe there was addiction and there was death. Maybe there was instability and poverty or emotional suppression, survival mode that lasted for generations. And maybe you don't actually know. And honestly, a lot of people don't, because many families never talked about what they have lived through. But even beginning to ask those questions can create compassion. This is not to excuse harmful behavior, but this is to start to understand that nervous systems adapt to the environments that they survive in. And sometimes when we begin exploring our patterns, we can start to realize this actually did not begin with me. And there can be something deeply healing about understanding that your nervous system may have been carrying protective strategies that once helped your family survive. Because sometimes the intensity you feel in your body may not have fully started with you. And to me, this means your nervous system learned through both experience and inheritance. And what is so incredibly powerful is that even though patterns can be passed down, healing can be passed down too. And this is where it helps to understand what's actually happening inside the body. Because fight energy is not just emotional, it's physiological. Your nervous system has something called the autonomic nervous system, which is the part of the nervous system constantly working in the background to help keep you alive. Most of the time, you're not even consciously thinking about it, and you might not even know about your autonomic nervous system. It's automatically regulating things like your heart rate, your breathing, your blood pressure, muscle tension, and your body's response to stress and safety. And one branch of the system is what we call the sympathetic nervous system, which you've heard me talk about. This is the part responsible for that mobilization and survival energy. So when your system actually senses danger, whether it's physical or it's emotional overwhelm or conflict or stress or perceived threat, the body begins preparing for action. The body begins preparing for protection. Your heart rate increases. Breathing becomes faster or more shallow. Your muscles tighten. Energy rises through the body and your brain begins shifting into survival mode. And there's research showing that during highly activated stress states, that prefrontal cortex, as we've talked about, the part of the brain involved in reasoning, impulse control, and decision-making becomes less active, which means that when people say, I don't even know why I reacted like that, there's actually a nervous system reason for that, because the body has shifted away from reflection in that moment and towards protection. And honestly, it's a little like those moments in Inside Out, when one emotion suddenly takes over the control panel. As we've talked about, things get louder, they get faster, they get more reactive, and the system loses flexibility for a moment because the nervous system no longer feels safe. And when the body perceives threat, as I've already said, whether it's physical, emotional, relational, or even internal, it does what it knows how to do best, which it prepares to survive. And this is where the reframe can become really important, because instead of asking what's wrong with me, we want to begin asking, what is this response trying to do for me? Because I truly believe that fight energy is trying to create space. It's trying to help you have a sense of control. It is trying to protect your boundaries. It actually wants to help you prevent overwhelm. And it's helping you try to push back against something the body perceives as too much. And when you can start looking at your reactions through this lens, maybe some things can start to shift. And hopefully you can move out of shame and into awareness. It is not sitting with, I'm crazy, or I'm too much, or I'm just this angry person. But it can become, my nervous system learned this response for a reason. And my friends, that awareness matters, because we can't work with patterns we only judge. We first have to get curious about them to start to understand them. And this part is really important too, because a lot of people hear nervous system tools and think, okay, I'm going to try that next time I'm overwhelmed. But here's what often happens. We wait until the nervous system is already at a 10 out of 10 and then feel frustrated when the tool doesn't work. You guys, the tools are not going to work if you are just saving them for those 10 out of 10 moments. But here's the thing, your nervous system does learn through repetition. And when the body is deeply activated, including things like your heart racing, your muscle tension building up, those thoughts speeding up, fight energy becoming fully online, the brain has less access to flexibility and new learning. The system shifts into survival. And so this is a part of why moments like severe road rage can become so intense. I remember one time driving towards Salt Lake City with a few of my younger kids in the car. We got to this red light and I noticed two cars speeding and were weaving through traffic like they were racing each other. And when we finally stopped, they stopped both ahead of me at this light. And I watched one of the drivers get out of his car, walk over to the other vehicle, open the driver's door, pull the man out of his car, and start punching him in the middle of the road. Honestly, I had never seen anything like this in real life before. It was terrifying, especially with my kids in the car. And now, understanding the nervous system so differently, I look at moments like this through different lenses, not in a way that excuses harmful behavior, because that is not something that is okay, because accountability still matters. But I try to see it in a way that recognizes that nervous system had lost almost all his flexibility. That person's capacity was so narrow in the moment that they probably should not have even been driving. Because when fight energy becomes that activated, the body is no longer functioning from grounding, responding. It is functioning from survival only. And while most people may never experience fight at that level, many people do know what it feels like to become overwhelmed enough that reactions happen faster than thought. So, which is why practicing these tools when you're more regulated matters so much. Not perfectly regulated or not perfectly calm, but inside your window of tolerance. Because over time, your body begins learning, oh, this tool is available for me when I am starting to feel an intensity of this mobilization. And eventually, these pathways become easier to access during stress. Because in survival mode, the brain doesn't learn very well. Its job is to react. And this is where the 4Ns can become really helpful as a way to begin working with what your body is doing in real time. First is notice. When does this energy show up? What does your body feel like before you react? I want you to think about that when you think about anger or intense emotions. Does your chest get tight? Do you clench your jaw? Do your thoughts start speeding up? A lot of my clients experience heat in the body now that they're starting to notice. And the second is name. This is where we want to name that, such as a part of me is activated right now, which can actually help bring awareness back online. Dan Siegel often talks about this idea as name it to tame it. Not because the naming is going to magically remove your feelings or reduce your intensity, but because awareness, remember, helps create a little more space between you and your reaction. And again, we want to try to practice naming and noticing in states where our body is calmer so that it can remember to do it as we feel more intense. Third is nurture. It's something like, this makes sense. Instead of that self-judgment of maybe I'm ridiculous. Maybe it's also saying my nervous system learned this response for a reason. What would it be like to just stay with myself in this moment instead of judge myself? What compassion can I offer myself just for a moment? And then navigate. What is that very next step? Because fight energy often needs movement, you guys. Sometimes we cannot just go into child's pose or bring our breathing back down or go into a meditation. Fight energy is built up energy. I want you to think about a picture of a volcano erupting. If you think about that, we really couldn't just tell the volcano, you don't need to erupt. You just need to go and do some breathing. Fight energy needs movement often. It needs pressure. It needs to discharge. It needs grounding, and it needs completion. This is why, unfortunately, people hurt other people, because they cannot just stop. They have to follow through because of the intensity of the emotion in the body. And these tools that I'm going to share too with you today are not about suppressing the response. They're actually about helping the body move through activation differently. And this is where somatic work can be really powerful. Because as I've said, fight energy is mobilizing energy. The body is preparing to act, to protect, to push back and defend, which means trying to think your way out of fight usually is not going to work very well. A lot of times the body actually needs that movement, as I said, to help dispel that energy. And I want you to think about that already. I want you to think about, is there a time in your life you can remember when you felt angry that doing something actually helped you? I'm going to share a lot of tools. You guys can also find them in the show notes. The first one is shaking and tremoring. One of the simplest things you can do is shake out your body. And I know it can seem weird. I have a picture of me doing this on Instagram. You guys can go to it, Aligning with Leanna. There's plenty of other somatic practitioners online on Instagram as well that you can just watch doing body shaking. Shaking out your hands, shaking out your arms, your legs. Just full body shaking for a minute or two. Animals naturally just discharge stress this way, but after survival activation, they are able to do that. And humans, we often suppress that instinct. So shaking can help release the tension and the mobilized energy the body is still holding on to. Okay, another thing to try is physical resistance. This is just pushing firmly against a wall until you feel your muscles engage. Like make it feel really, really hard. You can also grab a towel and slowly twist it in opposite directions in both your hands while exhaling. Some really deep, heavy exhales like, it really helps to make some sound coming out of our deep belly. Sometimes my clients will even do push-ups or resistance-based movement to help the body safely discharge activation. Because remember, fight energy often wants resistance. The body is trying to complete a protective response. Another thing is vocalization and sound. You can make low voo sounds, which come from somatic experiencing work developed by Peter Levine. These low voo sounds can help calm the nervous system through vibration and your vagus nerve stimulation, which if you remember, we want to stimulate the vagus nerve because that helps the part of the nervous system, the parasympathetic, come back online and help the body rest and digest. And then there's things like deep humming or groaning or singing or even safely releasing sound into a pillow or alone in the car. And when I say deep sound, as I just said before, I mean letting it come from the deep part in the body, not just your throat. Sometimes the nervous system needs sound more than words. And I want you to think about this for you. For me, this gets especially tender when I think about my dad yelling growing up, right? And like how powerful this would have been if he had tools. And as a young mom, I did the same thing because I didn't know there was another way. And if we can intentionally start to create some of these practices, my hope is that we spend less time taking out this intense emotions on the people that we love with sound and also with our physical body too. Okay, the next one is impact movement. These are things like stomping your feet, jumping up and down, punching a pillow, or using a punching bags. Gorilla taps, where you're just hitting your chest really hard, and you can even make gorilla sounds. And this is to help move energy through the body. These ones are really helpful, especially when anger has been suppressed for a really long time. Then there's grounding. Eventually, the goal is helping the system come back into safety once it releases intensity. Things like legs up the wall pose, where you can just Google it. It's a yoga pose where you're literally just putting your bottom up against a wall and your legs are at a 90-degree angle up. Then there's things like mindful walking, orienting, where you're just slowly looking around your space and taking in all the different senses. Or you're feeling your feet firmly on the ground or in the grass or in the dirt or in the sand. This can help your nervous system shift out of survival activation over time. Then there's things more like expressive movement, all kinds of dancing, running, fast-paced walking, or movement with rhythm. Sometimes the body simply needs somewhere for the energy to go. These things help your body feel safe enough to hold intensity different. And this is important too. You do not have to wait until you're at absolute breaking point to practice these. Like I said before, in fact, the nervous system learns best through repetition inside our window of tolerance, inside safety, and inside capacity. So this is why practicing during calmer moments matters so much, because eventually your body starts recognizing, oh, I know what to do with this energy now. This is one of the coolest things. And this is also why support and repetition matter so much, because most of us were never taught what to actually do with activation in the body. We were taught to suppress it, to ignore it, to push through it. And that eventually led to shame for so many of us. But nervous systems change through practice, through awareness, through repetition, through experiencing safety over and over again in small ways. And something really cool is I love when I work with a couple or a mom or a dad, and they take these anger tools home that they're trying as adults to change patterns. They don't want to yell at their kids. They don't want to harm them physically. And so they will start creating routines at night where they play a really loud pump up song. Maybe it's rock and roll. Maybe it's just something the kids know and can sing, and that everyone can use this as their shake it off song, shake off the energy and make sound and give each other permission to have a place to release sound, let the body move. And it's so beautiful because this is creating increased sense of safety for your children as they get to watch you release emotion in healthy, powerful ways. Okay, side note too, when we do things like this at home or when I teach school teachers how to do this in the classroom, there are always a few grounding rules when we practice releasing emotion inside a space. The first is that we are all in our own space. The second is that we do not harm or touch others. And the third is we do not damage property. So we can make sound, we can move our body, but we aren't touching others. We aren't hurting property, and we are staying in our own space. So however that looks for you, if you have questions about that, make sure you reach out and send me a message on Aligning with Leanna, and I can answer that. So with all of this, it's just so beautiful for me to just sit in reflection because I've watched so many families' lives change by integrating some of these techniques for releasing anger, and how beautiful it is for our children to feel safe in their own home environments to release emotion too. This is also exactly one of the reasons why I created the NeuroHeir regulation support app, which is free right now inside the NeuroHeir coaching membership. It's a place you can come back to. It offers somatic tools, guided practices, nervous system support based on whatever state you're in. And it sends reminders to you that help your body learn through repetition over time. It reminds you that you can practice these things, and it helps you feel confident in practicing some of these things, because healing is rarely one big breakthrough moment, my friends. More often, it's small moments of practicing something different again and again. And maybe this week, you simply begin noticing with a few questions I'll leave you to ponder, and you can also find them in the show notes. First question: when does my fight response tend to show up the most? What does my body feel like before it happens? What might this response actually be trying to protect? What happens if I pause, even just briefly? What support does my body need in those moments the most? And as we close out this episode, I want to leave you with this. Your anger is not proof that something is wrong with you. Remember, it is proof that something in you is trying to protect you. And when you start learning how to work with your nervous system instead of constantly fighting against it, you don't lose your intensity. You learn how to hold it differently. And maybe that's part of what healing really is. It's not becoming emotionless. It's not never getting activated again, but it is about building enough awareness. It's about increasing capacity and your sense of safety that the nervous system no longer has to take over the entire control panel every time something feels overwhelming. Just like we see in the movie Inside Out, the goal isn't to get rid of anger, because we need anger. Anger is so valuable for those moments where he is really needed. But it is about helping the system learn that anger doesn't have to run everything alone. And next week, we're going to continue this conversation with flight. We're going to go into more of the anxiety, the overthinking, the constant doing, and the inability to slow down. And I will walk you through what it looks like, what your body is doing, and the somatic tools you can start practicing right away. And always remember to check out the show notes for the reflection questions and these anger somatic tools. You guys, make it a beautiful rest of your week. I hope you will take some time to reflect on anger patterns in yourself and in your family. And again, do it through the lens of curiosity, of compassion, with the intent to heal and choose what you pass forward. So until next time, bye guys. Thanks for joining me on the NeuroHeir podcast. This work is about honoring resilience in yourself and also those who came before you, all while finding freedom from what was never yours to carry. With the help of stories, science, somatic tools, and the 4 N's, notice, name, nurture, and navigate, you have a path toward deeper connection with yourself, your loved ones, and the legacy you want to pass on. If today's episode spoke to you, share it with someone who's ready to step into this work too. And follow the show so you never miss an episode. Remember, you may not have chosen what you inherited, but you can choose what comes next.